Welcome to another Tzuzamen. Hi, Tzip.
Hi, Tzili.
Ran Avni. Ran Avni was the founder and the director of the Jewish Repertory Theatre. Ran, when did you start it and when did you close it?
I started in 1974.
Wow.
Yeah, it was right.
After the Yom Kippur, you were.
It was after the Yom Kippur War. I came back to the States. I went to Israel to fight the war. I was a paratrooper, and I was so I came back, and I was depressed as all hell. I was just recently separated from being divorced. First divorced and separated. I didn't really have a job. I had a job on Staten Island, which was. So one day, I get a call from a guy named Avni Regev. Avni Regev was an Israeli actor who I knew from Israel, from the Converse Theatre. And he said there's a foundation in New York that will give $800 gift to if we put together a list of Israeli artists working in New York. Because I started to talk about the theater. So I said, would you sign it? So I said, sure, I'll sign it. And he said, but I said, why just do it? Let's just really do something with the money, So I had this idea of running a theater in New York about Jewish topics, but in English. So it was not people, Jewish theater, they associated with Yiddish. Somehow those two words together, no matter what I did, which was
theater.
It was a mixed blessing, because in one way some people thought. On the other hand, it gave me a long time to. So that's it. I worked. I studied in Boston in Emerson College, and
you studied theater.
I studied theater. I studied directed at their graduate program. And then I worked at a job in the community center. And my job was to put some Israeli and Jewish culture into it. It was right after Yom Kippur, the war where everybody was, Israel. So then I did a play called God of Vengeance, which I found in Joe Landis. He was a professor at Queens. Translated the play by, what's his name? The famous Shalomash, yeah? Shalomash, God of Vengeance. And I remember it, I said, that's a play we can do in New York. Because it's Jewish, but it's in English, and it was an interesting play. I don't know if followed many, many years later, this woman, this avant-garde woman, I don't remember her name, but she did a show about the making of the God of Vengeance production on Broadway in 1880. That's when they did the first one. With Schildkraut was in the leading role. The show is about a very wealthy Jewish guy in Europe, in the shtetl, or whatever, the small town.
Great.
And he has a, you familiar with the play?
No.
Oh, so he's very successful. He has on the top floor, he has a beautiful business, and people come to see him and say hello. And in the basement, he runs a bordello, a whorehouse.
I guessed it when you started about this Paritz.
Predictable, but nobody's ever written anything like that. This is, and on top of everything, his daughter, the pearl of his eyes, has an affair with one of the hookers downstairs. So it was the first play, I think, in history that talks about female love. Not
very progressive.
Very, And I remember that John Simon reviewed it, that asshole. Remember John Simon, the critic?
Yeah.
Where he said, there are some interesting things, but of course they had to add something to make it more topical. So they add the lesbian scene. I mean, it was really outrageous. And I got a few, so I haven't studied at the Uda Hagen studio, And he knew people from the, I didn't know anybody except Avni. That was my first guy. So he got us going to say, we got Martha Schlammer. Remember Martha Schlammer?
Martha,
Schlammer. You don't remember Martha Schlammer?
no?
Martha Schlammer was a famous star of the Yiddish and American theater. She was a singer. And it's it, Lillian Lux.
Yeah.
Lillian Lux was later in the play that you designed. The guy who played the father was Irish, so that didn't quite work all that well, but it was great. It was a small success. We did it at the Avni Theater Club down on 17th Street and between 6 and 7 or something. And it was a 60-seat theater.
That's it.
And all of a sudden, we got attention. We got all kinds of not reviews yet, except from the Jewish forward, who said, I don't know how to say it in Yiddish, but said, what kind of Jewish repertory theater? It's not Jewish, it's not repertory, and there is no bima. No bima, no theater, because it was on the floor. Anyway, after that, in the fall of 74, I said, let's start to look. And we started to raise money, mostly from ourselves. And we did another play. Our first play was at the, we did that play. I'm sorry, down at the.
But Ran, wait a second. Because we'll never finish like this. How long it took you to form a real theater with few?
It's a gradual thing. It's not. So after that play, I went and I looked at the 92nd Street Y. Everybody said 92nd Street Y, 92nd Street Y. They didn't want to hear about it, but they said there's a small Y on 14th Street, the Emmanuel Midtown Y. Mm-hmm. Go there. I went there. I talked to them, said, look, you can have the dance studio and perform there. No money, nothing. Just we'll let you have it. And we started slowly to convert it into an actual theater, with that. And we did the first play.
You had a stage? You built a stage at last? Stage.
The what?
Bima, stage.
There was no stage yet.
Oh, okay.
The floor. We had the linoleum floor. And the director of the Y said, you're not touching anything. It's a linoleum floor. It's not. Later on, we did a play called Lilium. Lilium was the play that the musical was made. And the critic wrote, what an incredible idea to actually do the play on the millennium.
Linoleum.
Floor, because it looks like a contemporary, some bullshit. So our first play we did that was called Lea Goldberg, Nesichat Barmon.
Yes.
In English, they called it the Lady of the Castle.
Right.
We did it there with 4 actors. And
were paid?
Sorry?
Were you able to pay them?
We had what was known at the time as equity showcase, which you didn't pay. You paid car fare. Subway, but you're very strong restrictions. You couldn't have more than 99 seats. You couldn't charge more than $2.50 donation, not even a ticket. And it was a very limited, but it allowed actors who were members of equity to work. Actors always look for work in theater. Movies a little different. So it was kind of, I wouldn't say it was a success, but it was an end. You ask about the started.
Basically, you had only plays that dealt with Judaism or Jewish subjects, right? Or Jewish writers.
The mission statement was plays that relate to the Jewish experience in English.
Because I remember, well, first of all, this was parallel to the Volksbühne theater that was still working, the Yiddish theater that dealt with Jewish language even. But I remember that there were one more Jewish theater or 2, and this was maybe a little bit later on because I came here in 91. But there was downtown was a different Jewish theater. Do you
There
remember?
was a guy named Stanley Breckner who imitated
Right.
everything I did. And I first did this play that he did was God of Vengeance, his version. He did it in Brooklyn, and then he moved to New York.
But
And
what
there
was
was
the
another theater, flattery is the best.
But what was the difference between the line that you ran in your theater compared to his?
You mean the mission
The
statement?
difference that we were much better, and after a while, we're much better funded. We're much more consistent. We stayed at the Emmanuel Midtown 19 years. Then we moved up to the Playhouse 91 for another 11 years. So we were much more established, if you want to say. And I think our plays mostly were much better. He did had a few good ideas. And, it was competition. But so then Lady of the Castle, again, we didn't have any money. It takes place in a mansion in Europe where the woman comes in to rescue kids from the Holocaust to bring them back from Israel. The girl gets some kind of connection with the local count, and she doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to leave. Finally, she leaves. So, but it was a castle. Here we are in a dance studio. Wouldn't even let us touch the ceiling that was like white, absorbing sound thing. So instead of having real paintings, we put frames, just frames only, to give it an idea. I can write a book about comments that our subscribers made once, sometimes after the show. Somebody said, "What was those things on their wall?" And somebody said, "Oh, it's not finished yet. They're still working on it." So we did
Ran,
that.
I want to focus on the audience because the shows were good and you had great actors. I mean, really from the first line on of actors. And I want to ask you about the audience because you had a specific Jewish audience of those days. And today it's a little bit different. And I want to talk about the differences. And also, I think today with more anti-Semitism and the Jews are more shaky a little bit compared to those days. Tell us a little bit about the essence of the audience then and now and the place of Jewish theater.
There is now a Jewish audience?
No, but there is Jewish audience, but you don't have a Jewish theater.
So,
But no. But I want to know the differences.
So again, it was a slow process. In the beginning, it was a lot of local people. And then over time, people started to hear about it, word of mouth. We started to get reviewed. And the nature of the audience was the majority with that exactly the target audience that I was thinking they exist. They did not associate Jew or Jewish with religion. People are interested in bagels and general Jewish culture, etc. Religion was not made. We hardly did that. We did some Bashevi Singer, of course. Those are religious music. We did Taibla and her Demon, as you remember. We did a number of plays that were, but by that time it was already up there. So 91st Street, but the general audience just built. It takes time. People start to hear, and they have to take. But it's not in Yiddish, and those people who are interested in that. And the most important, I always told them, everybody had my funding letters and everything. I said, I know what you're looking for. You're looking for good theater, and that's what we try to give them. Not always succeeding, God knows, but the quality and the best work that you can find was my vision, my motor.
I think that the Jews who were more secular didn't like to go so much to something that called the Jewish theater, and they used to go to a regular theater. But those who didn't have any problem with the Jewish theater but wanted to stay in theater, but not too Jewish, but Jewish enough so they'll be part of it, used to be the audience of this theater. But then what happened, then you closed and nobody else opened anything else, and the audience changed. because the Jews that are going to the theater rather to go to regular production on Broadway, and the others don't care. They don't come anymore.
Well, there was enough. I mean, we ran for 30 years, so there were enough people who of that. But later on, we also got stars, and we got all kinds of publicity, etc. I did Arthur Miller plays in the world premiere of Arthur Miller musical. So, but if you want an illustration, not exactly about religion, but about Israel, on the day that Rabin was murdered, it was a Saturday, we had a group. There used to be head groups, a group from Temple Simchas Torah, something Torah up on the 79th Street on the Upper East Side. And they had tickets for like a third of the house was that group. The other 2/3 were the regular audience. The killing of Rabin became known like early afternoon. The entire Temple group did not show up. The subscribers, 90% showed up.
You know, at the same night, I did costumes for the Volksbühne at that time. The same night, we had the opening show with the Volksbühne, full audience, but this was the Yiddish audience. And they started the show. It was quiet. It was very strange and very tough atmosphere. They stood for a minute, for silence, and then they just ran through. And it was exactly the same night, but everybody came. It was packed.
Tell me something. You have Arthur Miller play, off Broadway and your theater. Does it matter to people if it's a Jewish theater?
The first play I did of his was called Incident at Vichy. I don't know if you're familiar. It was originally group theater. And it was a play that he wrote with a bunch of Jews inside the train station basement, and they were looking who was Jewish, take your pants off, who was Jewish and who was not. And it was really wonderful. It was one act it was done before, 90 minutes. And it was fantastic. He came to rehearsals. For his first reading, he brought Dustin Hoffman with him. Dustin Hoffman was rehearsing Death of a Salesman on Broadway at the time. And I directed it.
One got good reviews, people came more. But he had his audience, his really Orthodox audience for the theater, that they came all the time.
Not Orthodox religious.
Subscribers. They
Orthodox for his
when
theater.
Jews pay, they come. They don't throw their money away.
Yeah.
Sorry, but it was really a fantastic experience. And then he really, I can't say I became friend, but I went to his apartment in New York a couple of times. I almost asked him about Marilyn Monroe, but I could tell that it's one thing. But he talked a lot about his Jewishness, which he never really revealed. People didn't even know he was. Some people didn't know, but he was born in Brooklyn. They spoke Yiddish. His father was a butcher. So
people don't know that Columbus was Jewish.
That's news from yesterday.
Now, Columbus is Jewish. Yeah. No, people knew that Columbus was. Come on.
Then no, but now
in the last few days only, not until now.
Days.
So then Arthur Miller wrote a musical with a guy named Stanley Silverman. The first and last musical he wrote. Arthur wrote the book and the lyrics, and Stanley Silverman wrote the music. And it was a New York event, it's a New York premiere. Len Carey was in it, Lonnie Price, big names. And we got a front page article in the New York Times Sunday Arts and Leisure, which is the place to be. With my luck, that day, there were the 200 Marines. You remember that story? The 200 Marines got killed on my day. And it didn't get much attention. The next day, that's the day that Frank Rich was there, and he killed it. Everybody else, I got reviews. I have pages and pages of fantastic reviews. Frank Rich word at the time meant more than anything else.
Right. Yeah.
What
said-
was the most
You can feel a
successful
play.
play you had, Ran?
Kuni Lemel.
Kuni.
Kuni Lemel. We did the Kuni Lemel version of Not Like the Israeli. We had a musical called Kuni Lemel. We
Ah,
did the revival edit that Tzili designed the costume. So it was the best reviewed.
Yeah.
I think of it as my best work as director. It was of a musical. It was
who directed it?
Ran.
Ah, okay.
yeah. As the years went by, I directed less because I had many more responsibilities in terms of administration, etc. But in the beginning, I directed most of the play. So it was a huge success. It was done. We used to do the last play of a season, hopefully to extend for the summer because we had the space for the whole summer until the next season. And Kuni Lemel, by the end of when it was supposed to close, it was sold out for most of the summer.
Wow.
And the reason I jumped with that one right away is because it was such a joy. Everything about it. It was fun, and it was just what success in the theater should be. It was fantastically reviewed by everybody. It was audience
It was
pleaser.
an original music, not the one we know.
No, it was the original. There was a woman, Nama Sandro. I don't know if you know. She's a writer. So she spoke Yiddish. So she took the story, the original Kuni Lemel story, but wrote it a new book. The lyrics by a guy named Richard Enquist, who passed away since, who was married to Jane, from the Times, the health.
Oh, yeah. I know who you mean.
So Jane Enquist. So her, and then the music was by a guy named Rafe Crystal, who did a couple other plays for me before, and it was a great fan and everything. And they took this story, but they gave it a contemporary feel. The costumes were all totally, authentic and everything. But the idea was that like a woman who doesn't accept the rules of, her father, basically. You do this, you do that. And they made a shidduch for her with the guy who was, it was called The Boy is Perfect. So he has a little limp, but his leg is not, there's a little squint, but his eye is not affected. Very clever lyrics. And it was just a contemporary take, but you didn't feel that you're pushing something on you. It was just, it was very consistent with what the story was.
Do you think you can? Yeah.
And we had 4 boys at the end of the production.
Tell me something. You think
Really
there's an audience now for a Jewish
Can
theater?
I tell very briefly about the actress? So there were 2 actresses in the show. One played the daughter of the matchmaker, and one played the daughter of Reb Pinchas. And Tzili comes to me in one of the late early rehearsals, really, and she says, your Liba, that was the daughter of your Liba is pregnant. You're not supposed to tell. Don't tell anybody. She told me not to tell, but she already asked me if the show is extended.
She needs to be a virgin, and she was with a growing belly.
And I go to her, and of course I just wanted to know what's going on. So I said, what was the name of the actress? I remember. I said, I hear your Mazel Tov is due. She said, what's that? Turned out she wasn't even Jewish.
Ah. Wow.
Anyway, it turned out that it was the other way. And then the other one was pregnant, and they both did the show, and Tzili adjusted the costume a little bit, and she was fine. But
So tell me something. There is enough Jewish audience. You think Jewish population from New York will come now to Jewish theater?
Right now, it used to be that the first 10, 20,000 people who went to shows in New York were Jews. Not 100%.
It's a general Broadway or Broadway.
Right, until the tourists started to come in. It said the people who did the show, it's original people who read the New York Times. It's still a large proportion, but not at all what it used to be. And the Jews that come who are Jews are not as Jewish. Some of them are we're talking 1974, so this is a whole new third generation of Jews.
Right.
But still, there are people, but the idea of doing, there are few other theaters that started later, that tried, that came up. One came with the Jewish Theater of New York, one came out, a few that tried. There was one theater that just I saw recently that asked me, if I can come to the readings, etc. But I don't even go to Broadway, so
Why?
I tell people, because I said if it's good, I'll be jealous. If it's bad, why should I bother? I really am. It's not just a joke.
But you miss the theater, no?
She kept saying, "Why did you close that theater?" And until this very day, I know why, but I wish I didn't. It was mostly financial.
Right.
It was not just financial. It was right after 9/11. At some point, nobody ever thought that anybody was going to go downtown below 14th Street for anything. So all the theater uptown, we're all the way 91st Street, so the first and second. So all those landlords raised our rent by 400%.
Do you know if there is a new generation Jewish playwrights? Because I know in my department, we have one. We became very famous.
But they write about Jewish subjects?
No.
No. That's the thing.
I have to admit, I don't really know much about what's going on, but I see that sometimes, I have a young daughter, and Betsy likes to go to see a lot of shows. So I can see by the bios and there are, and some of them, and there has been actually not theaters devoted to it, but recent plays that are now on Broadway that deals with the Holocaust, with that show at the Armory. There are all kinds of shows of Jewish families before. I don't quite, but there is the topic. There still are people who either have an impulse or know that if they start with something like that, they'll have some interest in the beginning.
Yeah. Do you know that it's a film, sorry. How it's called? Ang Lee, man, woman, something. He wrote a script, but he wrote it for Chinese family. And something didn't work there. And the producer was James Jamos, who is Jewish. So he said to Ang Lee, why don't you write it as a Jewish family? So he wrote it as a Jewish family, and it was fantastic. And then he changed it back to Chinese, and it worked perfectly. And
the people who wrote Fiddler on the Roof, they said the biggest success they had was in China. In Japan, with Fiddler on the Roof, in their languages.
The Chinese and the Jews have something in common, and it's
well. The mushu pork.
Yeah, but very Chinese plays came to the stage. Not many,
right?
But still a little bit. So you started an era, and then that's it. No more.
I think
my
contribution was that it was no longer people looked down on Jews saying they're Jews, and I could tell when we were on 14th Street, we had the more downtown type of people and suburb people who are, more Jewy than others. But when I went to Playhouse 91, it was Upper East Side, and I could see those people who would go to see plays just like the level or the thing that we did, and found it beneath them to go to a play that has the word Jewish in it. And over time, they kind of got used to it, and most of them resubscribed. To me, the most important fact is how many resubscribed, because that was our better.
Yeah,
I think that if you would have a theater today, you wouldn't have the same audience. You would have Jewish audience, but they would want something else, a little bit something else, less Jewish maybe, or something safer. It's a tiny bit different, I think, but it's
Oh, it is. But
hard.
the style of theater in general, I mean, what you see
Yeah.
now is basically you see those big blockbusters on Broadway.
Right.
And then we have, all kinds of off-Broadway experimental and stuff like that. You rarely see just a straight new play that is
But there are
not.
very few theaters who can be kind of off-Broadway, like the Signature. What I was trying to say, that there are not so many good off-Broadway, theaters, like Signature, like Manhattan Theatre Club.
The whole theater world is not the same like it used to be. It used to be rich. It used to be interesting. It used to be challenging. No.
Well, but even though Signature managed to raise money for by hundreds of millions of tens of millions of dollars to buy their own house.
Yeah.
And so is a few others like that. Manhattan Theatre Club has their own too, and they have a Broadway theater. So in some ways, very rewarding because they're not profit, so they don't have to pay so and they have contributors, etc. But my model of in addition to Joe Papp, of course, my model was Manhattan Theatre Club. Lynn Meadow, which I actually knew her, and she was one of those non-Jewish, very Jewish Jew. Inside she turned out she went to Hebrew school but on the outside she knew from commercial point of view it's not something to put at the front of you, but she still has done a number of Jewish plays, maybe because she just liked them, etc. But I would have liked to be more like that, but I didn't have much to contribute. When I came, what I contributed was that I did something that has never been done in New York. There's never been done, trying to do Jewish that focuses and exclusive about Jewish plays in English. There was a guy at some point, Moshe Yasur. Do you know him, Moshe Yasur?
Yeah, I know the name.
Right. So they keep telling Moshe Yasur used to have the theater. I don't know when it was, what happened to it. But when I came, at the time there was like an emphasis on what they called ethnic theater. There was a black theater ensemble. Irish started after us, actually. The Puerto Rican theater, one in Spanish, was in English. The Asian repertory, all kinds of theater that were specifically about their groups. And I said, with all the Jews in New York, the audiences and the writers, not one theater that would not. So I had a opening.
Yeah, but you know that a lot of my colleagues who are Jews in like theater or television or film, they don't write about Jewish subjects, Like I have one who was part of the writers even of All in the Family. Another one is Mrs. Meisler Jewish?
Mrs. Meisler, she's very Jewish.
Everybody's
right?
Jewish. Yeah,
Okay, so he's Jewish. He's my colleague. Yeah. So
it's very Jewish.
Yeah. Anyway, I kind of feel sorry.
It's pity. It's pity because it was unique.
It still is. Jews really are conflicted. On one hand, they want to be just regular American, but there's no such thing as regular American.
Right.
Yeah.
America is more divided than ever before.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
That was very interesting and really gave us, you opened the door to, to the Jewish theater, and it's fantastic that you started it.
Now they'll start sending me plays.
Why? Well, thank you.
Maybe you'll do more.
It was really great. Thank you so much.
Everybody. See you next week. Bye.
Yeah, see you. Thank you. Bye.